Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Madeline Talbot-Layton and I will be conducting this afternoon's webinar, and with me is Michelle Palermo. Michelle will be monitoring for any questions you have. Please feel free to type them in. If we don't get to your questions during this lesson, we will attempt to answer them all at the end of the lesson. So today we're going to talk about finding comparable listings. There's several ways to do this on the system, but I'm going to show you a new feature that will make it really easy for you to set up and find your listings. So we're going to talk about using it, finding the listings when viewing the subject property, and we're also going to talk about how you can set up your own rules. So without further ado, let's go into the system. First thing I'd like to do is just let's go over some ways that you can find comparable listings, because there's different ways to do this. So the most obvious one is to do a radius search. So from the searches menu, if you click radius, you'll see that it comes up here. You can put in the radius. So let's say we want to look for a half mile around this address here. We're going to look for Victory Drive. This would be your subject property. When you're doing the radius search, you must make sure to put in the zip code, because it won't find it if you don't do that. And then we can go down. Now, if I was looking for comparable listings, then I'd want to put in some attributes that would be looking for something that's similar to my property. So let's say it's a single family home. It's a 4-bedroom house. So I'm going to look for 4-bedroom houses with 5 baths. I want to find something that's comparable. And I want to look for active, pending, and sold. And I found 5 listings, and there's the results. Now, when you're doing this, if the address you put in there happens to be your subject property, it will also be part of this list. So there it is at the bottom. So if I was actually going to run a CMA at this point, I would check everything off except this one down here, because that's the subject property. So that's one way of finding it. Another way of finding comparable listings is using the interactive map search. Here you can use the location field at the top to type in an address. And by the way, the address does not need to be a listing on the system. You may have a brand new build that has never been listed on the MLS. That's fine. You can type it in. So long as it's a valid address, the system will find it. Okay, so there's my address, and I'm going to just by hitting return, it puts a pin on the map. And here I can do my radius search for half a mile, just like I did before. And then under the search criteria, I can now put in that other information that makes it find comparable listings. So I was looking for active, pending, contingent, and closed. I was looking for 4 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. And there's my listings. So it's just 2 ways of finding comparable listings. But now I'm going to show you a different way that you might find a lot easier. So let's just go back to the home page, and I'm going to use the speed search to find my listing. And it was 115 Victory. And the reason I'm doing this is because if the listing exists in the MLS, there's an easier way to find comparables. When you do a speed search, if it only finds one listing, as soon as you hit go, it will actually go straight into the listing detail. When we're on the listing detail, here's our subject property. Notice on the action bar, there is a button called, Find Comparables. Let's click that and see what happens. There's the subject property at the top. Let me just move this over, that's better. And here are my comparable listings. Now, there's an awful lot here. I might want to narrow this down a bit. What the system has done is it's actually, behind the scenes, automatically run a radius search. But I can tell by the fact that it's given me so many back, it's not using quite the same search criteria. So let's go to the revised criteria here and see what is it actually looking for. And right away I can see that the default for this feature is using 1 mile, whereas I was using half a mile. So if I change that, I would expect it to give me less. Now I'm down to 19. What else was different? I noticed it was looking for expireds and temporary off markets. I don't want those either. But notice that it automatically filled in the bedrooms and the bathrooms because it knew from the subject property where it was located. It thought that it had to look for a mile. I'll show you how to change that in a moment. But it knew it was residential, single-family home, 4-bedroom house with 5 bathrooms. So it automatically did the search for me. So now if I look at view results, there's exactly what I was expecting. There's my subject property at the top, and here are the 4 comparables. This is a much nicer display because it does pull out the subject property. It shows you that separate from the comparative listings, and here they are here. So how did it know what to do here? Well, you have control over that. If you go to the admin menu and you come down to the Find Comparable Setup, this is where you can set the rules. So if you remember when I did the revise criteria, it showed me that it was looking for a mile out. Well, it did that because that's what the setup is set at. So I can change that. In the area that I work with, half a mile is more appropriate, so I will set that. You can put this to any of these increments you wish. If you're in a really rural setting, you might want a 10-mile radius. If you're in a very urban setting, maybe a 1/4 of a mile, especially if you're looking for condos, would be more appropriate. But I'm going to stick with half a mile. So that takes care of the distance, the radius distance. What else can we set up? Well, we can tell the system what range of bedrooms and bathrooms to look for. Now, if you remember when we did the search, it was looking for 4 bedrooms through 4 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms through 5 bathrooms. And the reason it was doing that is because I have this set to make no adjustments. What that means is when I am on my subject property, fill in the from and through as exactly the same attributes as my subject property. Do not make any adjustments. So in this case, if a 4-bedroom house, it would be from 4 bedrooms through 4 bedrooms. Likewise with the bathrooms. In this case, my subject property had 5 bathrooms, so it's saying look for 5 bathrooms only. Now, depending on where you are, and again, this will be up to you, and remember, you can change this on the fly as well, you may want a bigger range. So what you can do, if you want to, is you can tell the system to broaden the range. So, for example, if I say adjust the through value by 2, what that's telling the system to do is it's saying when I put in my subject property, take whatever value the subject property is, in the from, make no adjustments. So if it's a 4-bedroom, put in 4. But in the through, I want you to adjust it by +2. So in that example, it would actually be looking for 4 bedrooms through 6 bedrooms. Now again, it would depend whether this is appropriate or not, but you have that option. Let's make it +1. So in this case, it's going to take the value of the subject property with no adjustments. So if it's 3 bedrooms, it will be 3 through +1. So that'll be 3 through 4. And you can do the same the other way around. So with the bathrooms, maybe I want a -1. So in the case of 5 bedrooms, if my subject property had 5 bedrooms, using this calculation, the system, or 5 bathrooms, sorry, the system would say, look for properties between 4 and 5 bathrooms because it's the subject property -1. So that's how the adjustments work. A little tricky, but once you get it, it makes perfect sense. If you leave them as 0, it means give me the exact number. If you adjust it, it'll adjust the range. If you leave it as blank, that means the absolute minimum. So in a situation like this, if I had a 3-bedroom house, the range would end up being 0 through 4, because this means the absolute minimum, which would be 0, and this would be the property value +1. So it'll be 0 through 4. So you should play with this until you feel comfortable about it. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can save it, come back, adjust it. Here's where you tell the system what statuses you want to look for. Now, usually when you're doing comps, the off-markets and the expireds are probably not great. So, but again, it's up to you. In this case, I'm going to say only ever look for active, pending, and sold. Now, there's two other options down here that you can also view. And again, it will depend on what you're looking for. You can also put adjustments in based on the structure square foot and the lot size. So if I wanted to be more precise, I could say find comps that are within a range of, say, 500 square feet less than my subject property, or 500 square feet more than my subject property. And you know what? Include properties that don't have any square footage noted, because there still may be these 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom places that are applicable. If you turn this off, the system will ignore the structure and the lot size when looking for comps. It will just ignore it. It won't matter whether that comp is twice the size, half the size, it will just ignore it. If you want to take the structure and the lot size into account, then here's where you can actually tell the system to make adjustments. You know, you can say, I would consider a comparable property to be within 750 square foot lot size, either way of my subject property, and that's how you could do it. And again, if you turn this off, the system completely ignores it. So the way we've got it set up now, we're defaulting to half a mile. I'm telling the system to use the subject property attribute, but put a range in with 1 bedroom more, so I get some more listings. And vice versa on the bathrooms, let's go with 1 less bathroom than the subject property through however many the subject property has. Here are the statuses I'm looking for. And then you can save. I'm going to save and close this. So now let's do that search again. So there's our subject property. So now when I run this find comparables search, it's going to look based on the new rules I set up. So let's see what we get. And as expected, I got a few more because it's slightly different. And if you notice when we come down here, it's not just 4-bedroom, 5 baths that came up. It came up some with 4 baths because of the -1. And remember that you can manually revise this anyway. So if you click Revise Criteria, and you see what it did? It took the 0 plus 1, and it took the value of the thing -1. And that's how it works. And of course, you can change this on the fly. If I decide, you know what, I still want only 4-bedroom houses, etc. Okay? So that's how it works. That's how you find comps work, and you can do that at any time. Now, the other advantage to using this to find your comps is notice that the subject property is highlighted at the top here. That means the system knows what the subject property is, so that if you actually run a CMA, if I select all of these listings and I go to CMA and I choose to run a CMA package, when let's just find somebody. When I run my CMA, it will know what the subject property is because it knew from where I'm coming from. Its subject property is right here. So that's how it works. This may be one that already existed. So let's see. Oh, there it is. So there's your subject property. So that's just a time saver. It just pre-fills that for you because it knows what the subject property is. When you do it the other way, you have to tell the system what the subject property is. Okay, do we have any questions? No. Okay. So just to reiterate, if you can't remember how this works, let's just go through it again. When you're on any search, it doesn't matter how you find your listing. When you're on the listing detail, when you click the Find Comps, it will run an automatic radius search, and it's based on whatever settings you have on the Find Comparables setup. So you might want to go in there and just set that to what you think would be the appropriate setting. And then that's a time saver. It just runs it for you, and then you can manipulate it as needed from there. One last thing, on the Help menu, under the Learning Center, if you click there, if you type in comparables, there is a video on the Find Comparables, show you how to do it. Okay, and that is it. If we don't have any other questions, thank you very much for joining, and please feel free to go and play with the Find Comps. Goodbye.